On a brisk Melbourne afternoon in my latest instalment of Jibber Jabber, and of course what else about the coronavirus. Here we are 1 month into our modified lifestyles, let's say. Some are social distancing more than others, some are still at work, some are wallowing in the gloom and doom, and others are taking a positive mindset and making the most of what is a difficult situation for a lot of people. Of course, my thoughts go out to anyone who is suffering ill health or worse from this. Certainly to be kept in perspective, all the inconveniences that we're all going through are nothing compared to those who have lost their lives or suffered serious illness. But anyway, rather than focus on the negatives, what I wanted to talk about a little bit was some of the positives which may come out of it for a lot of people. So I've entitled this 5 ways that your life just might be better off at the end of the COVID-19 period. Not to say that any of us wanted it to happen, but the fact is, here it is, and we have to cope and we have to adapt. And one of the great things about human life is that, the ability to adapt to stress, forcing yourself to improve in order to cope with the situation. And that's everything in life, whether it's financial strain, whether it's health, whether it's physical training. It's all about adaptation. It's all about exposing yourself to a challenging stimulus in order to bring about change to cope with that. So let's pick a few things out today that I think may enhance your lifestyle moving forwards. Again, the challenge is whether you're going to sustain or maintain some of these practices when life returns to relative normality, if that's possible for many of you. So I guess the first thing I want to touch on is on that point is resilience. How many people at the prospect when this thing first came out, the reality that a lot of people were going to have to stay home, the people were quite distraught at the idea of it. But here we are almost 1 month in, and a lot of people are coping just fine. Not to say you haven't had to make major adjustments. A lot of people are working from home. I know I was already, when I was home, I was working from home. Some have had work cut back. Some have lost their jobs. I've had other people tell me they're financially better off now than they were before by not having to work, which is kind of quirky and weird in itself. But notwithstanding, all the challenges, not being able to go where you want to go, when you want to go, and see who you want to see, and do the things you normally would be able to do freely, having some of those liberties taken from you or restricted. And I'm not going to go into whether they should or shouldn't be. That's a separate issue. But for a lot of people, it's a major lifestyle change, and just the fact that we live in a society where we've never really been told what we can and can't do within reason. So that's brought about a resilience in a lot of people. And I think for a lot of people, in the long term, it will be for the better, that you actually have taught yourself that you can cope with the challenging circumstances better than you thought you would, having never expected to have to go through it. And that's not to say, we're only talking about a month. This may be a couple of months, 3 months, 6 months, depending on which media channel you listen to, the rest of the year, if you listen to some people. So again, it's not only the resilience, but now the challenge is to sustain that and continue that longer term, so that it becomes a character trait, and that's very important. The second thing is, you've been forced to learn how to do things in a more cost-efficient and maybe time-efficient manner, and that is, even though forced against your will to some extent, that's actually potentially long-term beneficial, particularly if it's cost-efficient. You found more efficient ways to get your job done, whether it's utilizing technology. You may have, out of necessity due to reduced income, had to look at ways of reducing your overheads, and again, you may be able to continue that once things return to relative normality, which in effect is the equivalent to saving money down the track, which is the same as making money. So from a financial point of view, learning how to to cut costs, learning how to trim the fat, learning how to do things in a more efficient manner. You will find that there are things that you actually could do from home that you didn't need to go into the office for, or you didn't need to go into work for. I know for myself personally, I was in 7 countries in 6 weeks before we got locked down, with more travel planned shortly after. So it is a major adjustment for me, but I'm actually embracing that I can actually get a lot of things done at home that I wasn't finding I had the time to do being on the road, or wasn't in the right environment to do those things. So there is some benefit to come out of that, which will play out down the track, because now a lot of those things are done, which may have still sat on the things to do list for a number of months moving forwards. And the third one is just we don't take things for granted anymore. And I touched on before our way of life. We're so fortunate to live in Australia that, despite the number of people who bitch and moan about our life over here, but, some of these things that we're being restricted from at the moment, just our portability and our ability to do what we want, and accountability and so on. In some countries, that's the way they live all the time. So spare a thought for how those people feel, that their whole life is controlled by where they can and can't go, who they can and can't see, and so forth, and just the general monitoring. We've had it for a month, and people are swinging from the trees. They're going nuts about it. But the reality is, understand the situation and just roll with it, because in the long term, it is we're all starting to see the benefits from it now, in terms of the impact of this terrible thing, and the benefits are starting to show through from some of the sacrifices we've had to make. So the old adage that your health is your wealth has never been truer. Not to say that, of course, always great to have something there for a rainy day, particularly those people who are suffering a bit of financial hardship at the moment. You may be relying on your nest egg, or some of your reserves to get through, and that's why you have them for these challenging times, and hopefully that doesn't extend too long into the future. But the most compromised people, or the most at-risk people in this situation, the people who are in poor health. So never has it been more prominent to us, the importance of staying healthy through the bulk of our lives, and it's good to see so many people taking up healthier lifestyle activity. It's ironic that it took for this to happen for people to do it, but more people exercising than ever. You go into any sports store or any sport and recreation provider, and they're all out of equipment. Everyone's just bought everything. So it's great that for some people, of course, it's to replace the fact that your normal exercise environment is closed, so your gyms and so forth. But for other people, they weren't exercising before anyway, and now suddenly they're very conscious about, incorporating some exercise into their daily life. And I think also the importance of that as part of a coping mechanism as well, for the fact that you're home, and many people are home all day, and it does break up your day, and it does act as a bit of a stress reliever, if you like, or a bit of a distraction, if you like, and you get that endorphin release from exercising. Again, the challenge will be is when everything goes back to normal, that you sustain some of those healthy practices, and will put you in good stead moving forwards. I guess another thing is I touched on before, being more cost effective in some of the things you do, not only from a work point of view, but also from a personal point of view. I read recently somewhere where the casino or gambling was costing Victorians $36 million a day in lost money. So you think, here we are a month down the track, how much extra money people have in their pockets from not losing it on such things as gambling, whether it's in a pokey or casino type environment, or whether it's on sports that are not running at the moment, and all those type of things. And again, if you're not losing it, it's the equivalent to making it. Now I know that may be a trade-off somewhere down the track, because you may be losing some money with work, but if you're just losing that money that you're earning anyway, this is a good way to break the habit. And I guess gambling is a habit like a lot of other habits, and having to be forced to break the habit the longer this extends, actually the better it's going to be for you, because once a habit has been broken for a long time, then you're less likely to kick in again when everything goes back to normal. But again, that's the challenge for you moving forwards, is now that you've had a bit of a relief from these losses, that you realize that now that you can really live without it. So maybe you can either not return to that, or return to that in a more controlled manner, or with a greater appreciation that the value of not wasting your money nowadays, because this thing has happened at the moment. It's not to say something similar can't happen down the track, and everything we're going through at the moment doesn't become the norm when any time something like this happens moving forwards. I guess the other thing is, for some, and they may cringe when I say this, is all your list of things to do that you've been procrastinating about and putting off. You now have time to do some of those things, particularly around the house. I've probably spent more time digging in the last 2 days than I've spent in the last 12 months. And that's not to say I didn't have the odd moment here and there, although I was rarely home. I would look at this massive pile of dirt and procrastinate every time I looked at it. I've spent the last 2 days, just wheelbarrowing dirt back and forth, but now it's done. I feel so much better that it's done, because I looked at it for 12 months thinking how great it would be when it was done. But reality is it may have sat there for another 12 months, and not just that, also it was a little bit of exercise as well, so that's a good thing. I certainly feel better psychologically now that I've done it. Physically, maybe in a couple of days I'll feel better for having done it, but certainly there's a little bit of satisfaction in having that done. And I've had a lot of odd jobs done around the place in the last 2 weeks that have been on my list of things to do but just haven't got done. So that's a good thing. I know some of you have some lists given to you by your domestic partners, or well, I can't comment about that. That's your life, but I know some of you would do them happily and willingly, some begrudgingly, but the fact is you can get some of those things done, which will create some harmony in your household, I'm sure. I guess the last thing, the most important thing, is just our general appreciation of our way of life. I think now that we've had some of our freedoms and liberties, I guess to a large degree, restricted, and in many cases for good reason, people actually now appreciate where we live, and the fact that we have all these things at our disposal. We have access to nature. Now people are finding every opportunity to go for a walk outdoors and get some fresh air that we would have taken for granted before, wouldn't have thought twice. Maybe it's the naughtiness of doing things that we now are being told we can't do. Suddenly people are wanting to do all of these things that they may not have been doing previously anyway. But of course within guidelines and within recommendations of what we should and shouldn't be doing, there is an appreciation for the fact that we were able to do all of these things before, unencumbered, unhindered. So again, when some of these restrictions are lifted, appreciate that you have those opportunities that, again, a lot of people in a lot of places don't. I guess one of the major ones is interaction with other people. Some people are lost without the ability to interact with others at a face-to-face level. So in the meantime, technology is there. I've had lots and lots of people contact me through social media, through different chat functions and so on, just checking on each other and seeing how we're going. It's been fantastic, really, just to have that interaction with people. It doesn't replace face-to-face, but some of that interaction has been with people I wasn't interacting with all that much before anyhow. So it's great that it's now encourage people to just to touch base with each other, even though you might not be consciously thinking you're doing it, to lend some support, emotional support or whatever it might be. But fact is, it has that effect anyway. Just keeping that interactivity going. Importantly, if you're feeling a bit distressed or stressed by it all. And I know some people are suffering greater degrees than others. There are others whose lifestyle hasn't changed all that much at work. I've spoken to a few people and they say, it really hasn't made that much difference to me. They may still be working, or they may have been working from home already, or they may not have been working at all, so there's not a whole lot of change for them. But then there are others who have been severely affected, if not health-wise, certainly employment-wise, and just the uncertainty of knowing, what you're coming back to, if you're coming back to anything at all. A lot of friends I have are business owners, and their businesses have suffered quite substantial negative impact. I know the government is rolling out some support for some people, but some people are not eligible, regardless. I know, my business, for example, and not that I require it, but is not eligible for anything the government is handing out. And then there are other people who are getting money who maybe, perhaps didn't contribute as much. Some international people and some other people who are deemed to be more in need, and that's fine. I mean, we'll get by, we'll manage, and everybody's case is individual and specific to their own situation. But I really do feel for a lot of those businesses and business owners that have plunged everything they've got into their business and getting very limited support back from the government. So hopefully this thing doesn't drag out too much longer. Like I said, the positives, I think, for a lot of people will outweigh the negatives if you can just hang in there and survive. If you're finding it tough, touch base with other people, reach out to support networks that are out there. Talk to others, don't bottle it in, because a lot of people going through the same thing as you. Don't be too proud to share how you're feeling with other people, but really as much as possible, the purpose of this video is focus on the positives, and certainly I know that's what I've been doing, and I'm doing everything I can to stay as busy as possible, and getting a lot of things done that I otherwise wouldn't have but always wanted to, and also coming up with a few things that through the experience have brought to the front of my mind, in terms of things that are possible now that may not have been relevant before. So anyway, good luck everybody. I hope you found this useful. If you didn't, that's fine. If you did, fantastic. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube, I throw lots of different stuff up there. If there's anything in particular you want me to jibber jabber about, shoot me a message, and I'm happy to give you my 5 cents worth. Okay, stay cool.